From policymakers to implementers as well as tech executives and legislators, the Connected Summit 2023 brought all the players in the ICT space to deliberate on the current state of ICT and of course map out the way forward into the future. This week on Inside Government, we revisit the Connected Summit 2023 with ICTA Chief Executive Officer Stanley Kamanguya. He's going to take us through their main achievement and of course what we should look forward for in the future. Thank you very much indeed, Bonasiyo, for joining us. Well, Connected Summit came and went. What has been your takeaway from this meeting?
Thank you very much, O'Brien, for first of all being with us throughout the summit, as we hosted a lot of delegates here in Diani. Indeed, this summit has been one of the most successful. In fact, it is the most successful so far. We registered over 1,500 delegates from across the country. We had very high level and high profile speakers who participated in this summit. We had good representation from all the arms of government. We had representation from judiciary, we had representation from parliament, and of course the executive side of government. Indeed, this particular summit brought together the delegates and the legislators. We have not seen in any other summit where members of parliament engage so closely with the sector. Therefore, we think that this summit has really been a huge success, and we have actually exceeded our expectations of the summit, and I'll tell you why. We thought that from this summit, we're only going to largely take stock of the industry and maybe look at how to implement our national digital master plan going forward. But the ideas that have been shared in this summit has provoked new ways of thinking to be able to deploy technology going forward into the future. One of the issues that we have been facing is how the government works with the private sector in the area of digital investments, where we find the government is investing in the same areas whereas the private sector is investing. We have resolved through this summit to foster better collaboration with the private sector. And indeed, we have come up as a key outcome of this summit with a caucus, with a sector caucus, that will not only review the outcomes of this summit and help us to shape the implementation roadmap for the initiative that has been identified, as well as monitoring of the same, but more critically engage the government on the high-level issues that the sector needs addressed. The issues of digital tax have been discussed, and how we can support the tech industry to actually help us leapfrog the economy. In collaboration with the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, we have agreed to set up a tech fund that will enable our startup in this sector to be able to be supported from a financial perspective. And both our Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Eliud Owalo, and the Cabinet Secretary in Investments, Trade and Industry, Honorable Moses Kuria, have pledged their support in this area. The ICT sector, in the private sector, has also taken up a number of commitments to work with the government to help us review various legislations to support the digital economy. We have also discussed the role of county governments and how the county governments, being the first level of contact with the citizens, will help us to align the national government ICT initiatives at the county level. One of the issues that have come up from the discussions with the counties is the issue of allowing infrastructure to be laid across the counties without restrictions, specifically on the areas of charging well leaves for people laying fiber optic infrastructure. The county governments have committed to relook at that issue, and rather than focus on the revenues that they collect from charging well leaves to contractors, they look at the broader impacts that are going to be generated when we connect these counties, and therefore allow people to lay fiber without charging well leaves. We also had an interesting session on the area of women in technology, where again we discussed how we can support women to rise in this sector all the way from an early age. We discussed a lot about an issue that is slowly becoming a nuisance in our country, which is the e-waste management. And again, we have agreed on a number of steps that we need to take to help us safeguard our environment, but also really make good use of the waste from an economic perspective.
You're talking about the formation of a caucus that will bring players from the public and the private sector together.
Yes.
Do we have an idea who is likely to be part of that caucus?
Yeah. So thank you very much, O'Brien, because that's a very important question. We really want to bring everybody on board. From our discussions, it has become clear that there are certain sub-segments of the ICT sectors that are not recognized. We have the people who do software development. They don't have a formal organization. We have the people who are dealing with emerging technologies, issues of machine learning, Internet of Things, and so on and so forth. We have the freelancers who, for one reason or another, are not in a position to register themselves as a group. We also have a number of contractors who operate in the area of laying fiber and are not regulated or recognized by the Communication Authority. So first of all, we have agreed to build a structure to bring everybody on board and then have representation in that caucus from the various bodies, including KEPSA, including TESPOC, which is the umbrella body for the technology people, and those other small areas that have not been represented. And we hope that with this we'll be able to carry everybody along for them to share their views and help us going forward.
On the issue of the launch of a tech fund, do we have an idea what is likely to be the seed capital and how much the government is contributing and how much will the private sector contribute?
So the idea is actually to have the larger part of the tech fund crowdsourced from private investors and international investors. That modality of the percentage is a discussion that has started. We should be able to provide more clarity, going forward in terms of the specific amounts that the government is going to commit on the seed capital. However, we have seen that some of the funds that have been established before have failed because of very stringent requirements for business to take part in. And we want to look at what modalities then can be put in place for us to be able to make the process easier for people to apply, but also encourage them also to apply. And one of the issues that we can agree on is the issue of the sector doing co-guaranteeing. But those discussions are still at a very high level. We're going to have more and more details as they emerge. Yeah.
I know as a country, there are other funds that have been set up, for the purposes of innovation and research. How would this work with the existing funds?
We haven't had a fund that is specifically set up for tech. We have funds that support people in tech in addition to others. But you realize the tech industry has its own unique challenges. For example, for people doing new startups in technology, one of the issues that we have been having is the issue of IP and registering their intellectual property. This fund, working together with other government agencies, is going to help to go out to people to help them acquire their IP, their intellectual property. But also, there are other unique challenges in the tech space because, for example, we are working with an organization where it doesn't necessarily require physical presence or physical offices, and we want to allow people to be able to develop software from anywhere. Some of the other funds have requirements that really restrict the flexibility that tech companies want to operate in. So that is why we want to set up a specific fund to support the tech industry. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that we are locking them out from the other existing funds.
You touched on the issue of levies charged by county governments in form of cess, in form of levies. And we heard this from the chair of the ICT committee of the COG, where he was saying that some counties the charges as high as 25,000 per kilometer of cable that you lay. So how do you plan to pick up this conversation, and how do you plan to ensure that this becomes a policy?
Yeah, so thank you very much. First of all, we think that the county governments, through the Council of Governors, have a huge role to play in this area. And there's already existing structures for engagement between the county governments and the national government through the IBEC. And these discussions will then progress there so that, first of all, we can have buy-in from the county governments. We need to sensitize them of the importance of allowing well leave. And then from there, we can model a policy around it that allows not only dropping the charges, but also allowing the inter-county infrastructure laying without a lot of restrictions. So we will address it through the IBEC. Yes.
On the issue of deepening ICT at the county level, and it also came to light that whereas some counties like Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, Kiambu, they have really invested so much in the ICT space. Yeah. Some counties are lagging behind. You're talking about counties like Baringo, counties like Turkana, Samburu. So as ICTA authority and as the national government, how do you plan to help these counties that are lagging behind in deploying more resources in the ICT landscape?
Yes, that is a fundamental issue because One of the issues that we want technology to address is inclusivity and equity across a country. And that is a gap that we need to close using technology. And we have agreed with the county governments that they are going to help us by also setting aside some resources to go towards the initiatives that we are rolling out at the national level. But also, from this summit, it has become evident that by bringing everybody in one place once a year is actually not sufficient engagement. And what we have agreed from this summit as a key outcome is to now have smaller engagements in regional summits, where we give people who are not able to, for example, come to Diani, an opportunity to also come, showcase, and engage and share their ideas as a precursor to the main summit, where we then bring all these ideas together. But from the discussions we've had with the county governments, the critical issues that they have requested us to address, the first one is on the innovation hubs. We had very robust discussions on developing smart cities. But we have agreed that we cannot develop smart cities in the cities when our villages are still struggling with access to technology. In fact, we will then be widening the digital divide. So we have agreed that we also have parallel initiatives for smart villages through the hubs that we are establishing, so that then we start identifying commonly shared platforms as we build the smart cities, because the smart cities are important for the cities in terms of attracting foreign development, foreign capital, and making our country a pure hub on ICT. We then also have parallel initiatives to upgrade the counties through the innovations and through deepening access to them. And we have agreed that we are going to work with the ICT providers in the counties to be able to help us penetrate and go into the homes to provide connectivity. Yes.
The other proposal that came from the private sector is the formation of subsectoral committees that will be meeting prior to the conference, so that they can report on the challenges each sector is facing and also develop solutions and share with the members. Is this likely to be implemented before the Connected Summit 2024?
So what we have set up, what we are calling the main caucus, that will look at the broader issues. We are going to be co-opting additional people into the caucus as and when required. But like you have rightly mentioned, we also need to set up subcommittees, and reducing the risk of having too many committees that then create inefficiencies. But critically, we have looked at the areas that the government has identified for in the transformation agenda, and we have agreed that we have, at a minimum, a sector for the four of them, a sub caucus for the four of them, that then works with the main caucus, and that's agriculture, health, small, medium, and micro, small, and medium enterprises, and then lands and settlements. So we'll have those for starters, and then we are going to continue having, much more, many more sectors being brought on board. Yeah.
And so then, how do you plan to align the private sector goals and needs with the public sector goals and needs?
That is an important question because this is where we end up having duplication of resources. And we are saying every penny that is spent towards digital investment or ICT investment, be it from the private sector or the public sector, in one way or another, it is coming from or being recouped from the same citizens. Therefore, we have agreed that um, we need to make sure that the investments in the digital space are efficient so that every single shillings, regardless of whether it's coming from a private sector or it's in the public sector, goes towards achieving our dream of closing the digital divide, towards our dream of increasing connectivity, towards our dream of rolling out online services, towards our dream of online job creations, towards our dream of digitally skilling our people. And we have looked at how then do we engage and break away from the traditional ways of doing business where it's usually a client, you know, customer, a principal and agent relation between the transactions of government and the private sector. We want to break that and make it a partnership. So that, for example, in the area of connectivity, instead of us contracting the private sector, awarding them government contracts to go and install last mile connectivity in our country, we agree with them that they can pick the international traffic that we are bringing into the country as government, and then they can resell it to their own private customers in exchange of them connecting the government institutions, in exchange of them providing public Wi-Fi, and so on and so forth. So by doing that, we bridge the digital divide and connect the institutions of government that we want to connect, but we also avail internet also to the citizens at a much reduced cost. So we don't want to play the space where the private sector is supposed to play. We want to create an environment for them to thrive, but also reduce the costs to government so that then these initiatives can be sustainable.
Mhm. And on your plans to construct or to lay 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cables, I know the government is planning to do 53,000. 52,000, and then the private sector will be left to do the 48. Have you received any commitment yet from any tech companies in terms of committing to lay any fiber optic cable?
We have not received solid commitments in terms of the actual numbers they are going to lay. In fact, from our engagements with the private sector, we have realized that all of a sudden this 100,000 kilometer of fiber is actually not sufficient to cover the entire country. But what we have commitment on is one, the mode of engagement with the private sector and how we are going to work going forward, which I've just explained. But then number two is also commitment within the private sector to collaborate more rather than compete. Because we are also asking them to not lay fiber and invest in areas where there is already existing infrastructure from another private sector player. So that is a commitment that we have so far. We believe that through the engagements we are going to have going forward, we shall be able then to go into the details and come up with actual commitments from different private sector players.
And when it comes to the issue of helping the government digitize its records, I know the target is 5,000 by June this year.
Yeah.
Why is the plugging in for the private sector to help in this?
So what we have done as we work out the modalities of the long-term partnerships, we have in the interim, issued contracts in the traditional way to the private sector for them to help us achieve the 5,000 kilometers that we want to lay out before June. And then after that, we'll have set up all the mechanisms that need to be in place for the agreed partnership to kick off. So that then we do not delay. We have a target that we need to achieve by the end of June.
Before I allow you to leave, help us understand, what should we look forward for by the time we get to Connected Summit 2024?
Yes, so we have a number of issues that we are going to be looking out to. One is what I've spent some time with. The other one is around the efficiency in operation of government. And we had a session where I was talking about data and digitization and how we can use data and digitization to actually change or upgrade the signature of government for efficiency. That is one area that we think we are going to have leapfrogged in terms of automation and providing services online. And not just providing services online, but providing services online through a one-stop shop, portal of government. We also have, through this summit, made some agreements with a number of private sector players, including Cisco, including Amazon and Oracle, on the area of upscaling digital skills at the university level, but also at the public sector workforce level. So we think that if we are able to follow through on the outcomes of this, on the outcomes of this summit, we should be able then to have a solid report on the progress going forward. And as we do so, the chief guest reminded us that as we think about technology, we have to think about growth of the technology. We have to think about how sustainable is the technology going to be, and we have to think about equity so that then we don't leave everybody behind. And therefore, we are really saying it is tech for all, technology for all. As we develop solutions, we want to carry along everybody. The other area which we are very passionate on, and we had a showcase of very good innovations, is on the area of digital innovations. We had many investors who showcased their innovations, and we've agreed also at the county level we need to do the same. So we really hope that working together with the private sector, we shall be able to fast track the implementation of these outcomes.
And also the National Assembly committed to work with the national government to fast track regulations, bills, and,
Yes.
and review of
Absolutely,
laws
yes.
that touches on the ICT sector.
Yeah.
How do you plan to elevate this conversation with the National Assembly?
Absolutely. We have a number of bills that are required to go to the National Assembly. Some of them have been sitting there for some time, including, for example, the Konza bill. We have also started working on our own ICTA bill. We have the critical infrastructure bill and so on. And with the collaboration now that we have established between the two arms of government, we think that one of the reasons why we take so long with bills in the process, over and above the timelines that are set out by law, is because we probably have not shaken hands properly with the National Assembly for them to understand what the bills are about, what are the technical details in the bill, and we take a lot of time. So we have agreed that we are going to, from this, we're going to have subsequent sessions for us to discuss those bills and for them to be able to understand, even as we take them through the process of public participation.
And finally, what do you plan to do to ensure that you get more representation in the upcoming or in the future Connected Summits?
So I think for us, the most critical thing is follow through. And we are seeing the trust and the confidence coming from the private sector. I think the private sector and our citizens trusts the existing government. They have trusted that the government is going to continue opening doors for them to have discussions and raise concerns and emerging issues. For us, we think the only way we are going to achieve this is to follow through. And we have the commitment from the highest levels of government, from the president, the cabinet, and everybody. And now you can see we have demonstrated through this summit. The legislative arm is also committed to support us. And us at the technical level then is really to move and follow through with the outcomes. So we think that will help us get even more and more participation. And the caucus that I mentioned also is going to help us in a big way. They're going to help us review how we conducted this summit, the proceedings. So far, the feedback is very positive in terms of the event organization, the amount of fun activities that people had, and also the topics. So we want that caucus to also help us review, even as we look at hosting a bigger Connected Summit in 2024. Uh, for me, it's just to thank KBC for being with us throughout the summit, supporting us, and we're now starting to see the true KBC and the fruition of the MOU that we have signed between ICT Authority and KBC. We thank you very much, and we thank all our delegates, all the citizens who are following us online. We continue the conversation through our online channels, Connected Summit, ICT Authority. We're in all social media platforms. Please continue engaging with us and giving us more feedback, and we'll be happy to engage you. Asanteni sana.
Good. Asante. Well, we have been talking to Stanley Kamanguya, the Chief Executive Officer of the Information, Communication and Technology Authority, joining us to give us more insight about the just concluded Connected Summit 2023. And of course, you have heard it from him. We look forward for Connected 2024 and of course the achievements that will be made between now and then. My name is O'Brien Kim, and you have been watching Inside the Government live from Diani in Kwale County. Have yourself a good afternoon.